Rangers lead the way, gentlemen. Welcome back to the Danger Ranger podcast. This is episode 24, and we're here with my good friend, Pearce Cucchissi, who was in my platoon. We were privates briefly for a time together, and he's got some cool stuff going on outside of the Army now that I think will pertain to a lot of you guys out there trying to go Ranger. So, Pearce, you want to introduce yourself here?
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess just a little bit of a background. I joined the Ranger Regiment coming out of college. It was everything that I wanted in the experience, right? All the highs and the lows, and we luckily got to do a lot of things and multiple deployments and be a private all the way up to a team leader. And so it was an awesome experience overall. So right now, the kind of the focus has been, since getting out of the military, getting the health back on track after getting beat up for a little while, and then building kind of business outside. And one of the cool things that I've recognized is how I can take that experience and play it into anything else in life. So especially if guys are looking into this as an entire career, or if it's just an experience, if you're the right guy and you can figure out how to be successful at it, those skills that you learn are going to bridge into everything else, right? You're in an environment with so many high achievers that it works almost everywhere. I'm sure you've seen that as well.
Dude, yeah, absolutely. That's stuff that I've talked about before too. It's like the difficulty of your experiences. Like when you get out and you want try something hard, you're like, oh, this isn't nothing compared to, Ranger school, or, that one shitty mission where we were walking forever, or the time I was a private, I was just getting my, getting dicked down all day long for nothing. Like it kind of, I don't know if the right word is balances that out, but it puts things in perspective. It's like, okay, I could, be sucking dick on the side of a mountain, or I can, deal with this relatively minor business problem.
Exactly. Yeah. It gives you a good frame of reference.
Mm-hmm. So what made you graduated college? What made you decide to join the Army instead of go and, pursue a traditional career right away?
Yeah. So, I considered military before college as well, but I didn't really find anything that clicked. I didn't necessarily know about special operations. My brother was a Marine. The idea of conventional military never really caught my eye. So, decided, hey, I'm going to go to college. I played some rugby in college, learned a bit, got some work experience, and even had a full-time job coming out of college. But it was towards the end there when I started to learn about Rangers, SEALs, Green Berets, MARCSOC. It was kind of like this light bulb went off in my head, was that's it. That's what I've been searching for. And I was kind of racking my brain of, what am I going to do after college? I'm this young guy. How do I make something of myself? How do I prove to myself that I'm worthy of being here and I earn my stripes, be around guys that I wanted to be like? I worked at Red Bull at a media job, kind of doing business development. And I'm looking at the guys above me in the career path, not that they were bad people, but just saying, I don't want to be that. That's not the path for me. I'm going to be miserable, right? So there's a ton of different reasons for doing it. And then it was basically, I learned as much as I could about all the special operations units, what it took to get there, kind of confirmed that that's what I wanted to do. That was providing the motivation. And I just learned as much as I could about training and the process and each unit. Luckily, I was able to call on some guys that I had found in books or on the internet, and they were willing to talk to me. And then I just made that pretty scary leap of jumping completely into the unknown and joining the Army.
Dude, that's awesome. So you joined up with an option 40, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah.
Because you probably didn't want to gamble with trying to pick one up at OSIT.
Nope. And I always recommend to guys, do not take the gamble.
Mm-hmm.
The contracts are available. If the recruiter says they're not, find a different one.
Find a different one, or wait until, just tell them, hey, I'm not going to join with that one. Like, that's what I want. And if you don't get it to me, I'll just wait. And they want to hit numbers, so they'll make it happen.
Exactly. And if that helps anybody, I went to probably 5 different recruiters. It wasn't until I finally found a guy in Inglewood, California, who was the guy that ran, all of the recruiting, was a former infantry guy, and he just got it. I walked in there. I said, I'm ready. I'm in shape. I can pass all the tests. I have the GT score. I went to college. I want an 11X option 40 contract. When you have it, I'll sign that day. And he basically didn't ask any questions. He said, okay. And about 3 weeks later, he called me and he had it. Whereas every other recruiter was like, well, we can do this, we can do that. Oh, I don't know if I can get it. Some of the recruiters didn't even know what Ranger Regiment are, right? And it's not necessarily their fault. But I just want to have guys come into this and saying, you do your own research, and the recruiter works for you. You tell them what you want, right? It's like the car salesman. If you don't go in there and tell them exactly what you want, they're going to try to sell you whatever is the best for them.
That's a good analogy. Because they're trying to hit a quota. And it's like, if they can convince you out of something and get you into something that's easier for them because they have the contract ready to go, like they're going to try and do that. But with regiment, like, you got to know what you want and you got to be willing to wait for it. Don't gamble on the OSIT. Don't gamble on you can pick it up at airborne school. Like, if you know you want regiment, it's not worth the gamble, because chances are you're going to lose that dice roll.
Completely agree. And some guys will say, yeah, well, when I went, they were giving them out at OSIT, and that's great. But again, it's a gamble. In my class, there were guys that were incredibly qualified. I guarantee you they would have made it through RASP. Couldn't go. Whereas there were some guys who, unfortunately, you could tell they were never going to make it through, and they had the option 40 contracts coming in, and so they got to go. So yeah, not worth the gamble. It's far worth it to wait an extra month to go into the Army to have it.
It's just going to give you more time to train, get yourself mentally ready. Anyways, like, and that's like the first gate, though, I think, is the dedication to just pursue getting that. Like, that's going to be your first really trial on the pipeline, is securing that option 40, being able to negotiate and talk to your recruiter and be patient if needs be, and hold out for that. Because if you're already taking easy route, I'll just pick it up later. Like, that's already showing that you're going to take the easy way out.
Yep.
Like it translates, down the line when you're actually in selection, if you make it to that point.
You have to know what you went there for.
Yeah, precisely. Like mine, I went to MEPS and I got mine at MEPS. Like, the dude was able to hook it up. I went at the beginning of the fiscal year. Like, I was reading all this stuff and I was like, hey, fiscal year October. I was still 17, so I was still in high school. My parents were like, they had to sign the whole early enlistment papers, and then went to MEPS and was luckily able to get one up there. I was elated when the dude called HRC in Kentucky and they made some magic happen. I was absolutely pumped. But beautiful. So how was your RASP experience?
That's a tough one, right? Because the RASP experience was kind of what I had expected it to be. But it was also the experience that I was looking for, right? There's what we think of as military training, and if you're a high performing guy, you don't really get that in basic, right? In OSET, you don't get that really intense hard. I know, all over people talk about which branch's basic training is harder. Who cares? Because they're all easy, right? But by the time I got to RASP, you finally felt like you got tested mentally. I finally felt like I got to a place where, like, you go to Cole Range. At the end of Cole Range, your body feels beat to shit, right? And so does everybody else. Everybody's limping around. But the RASP experience was good. It wasn't necessarily pleasant or always enjoyable, but it started to test. I really felt like I could put all of the practices to test, right? Could I put all of the mental, the physical, all of those things, and hone those skills so that I could make it out on the other side? Then, of course, when you get into phase 2, it's not all terrible. You get to learn some cool things, shooting and demo. So that was good. I finally got to a place where when I looked at the instructors, I felt like, yeah, I want to be those guys. And that's the place you want to be. The RASP experience was also, in terms of life experience and learning what creates success, was incredibly valuable. Because I remember being there, standing in formation, you know, at 5 a.m, and you're initially in there alphabetically. And so this was the same guys to the left and right of you. They were studs. One guy had gone to like the Olympic trials for triathlon. The other dude played D1 lacrosse. They were athletic freaks, and they came off really, really confident. And I'm thinking, oh, shit, I mean, I think I'm in shape. I'm all right. I was sort of a college athlete. But these dudes were studs. But I could start to hear whispers of the things that they would say to themselves, like in the in-between time when they didn't have to show their confidence. And one day, you know, one didn't show up. Another day, the other didn't show up, and they quit. And so you're thinking, like, how does that happen? Right? It is not all physical. There is so much more to this game. And I don't think I necessarily could articulate what I had at the time, or what like guys like you had at the time, but now I feel like I can do that better. I was just trying to figure it out. Like, what is it? What is it that caused this to happen? What is it that made some guys succeed and not? And so that was a really good experience, just being able to observe from the point of view of somebody who was successful. But other than that, yeah, there's always some crazy stories from RASP. It was a wild time.
Give us one crazy story, because the people like to hear them. Maybe a Coleraine story, or maybe, you know, something like that.
We had a guy. He was an E5 from the big army. So for most of you guys out there, there's not too many that come from the other units. The majority of the guys were option 40s, which I think from an actual special operations training point of view is a positive, because you're getting guys that are clean slates. They don't know anything else. They haven't been at any other unit. They don't know how to shoot. So you can teach them your ways. There's no bad habits. But there were some guys that came from other units. And of course, you know, you're the E5 in the group. So he was essentially the class leader. He had been there before, and the instructors hated him. Guy was a real, you know, thought he was better than the entire rest of the class, did not try to fit in, tried to make sure you knew that he was better because he was an E5. And he was cheating on land nav. Well, it was suspected of cheating. And finally the instructors, they catch him with something, and before they're going to tell him, he basically avoids the whole class is getting smoked, and he's in the porta potty. And he's in there for a long time. And he knows, right? Getting smoked is not a quiet thing. And instructors are screaming. And they asked where the class leader was. And they finally point out that, hey, he's in the porta potty. And so they go and they they tip the porta potty over. And they're playing. You ever seen tire flips? That guy's doing tire flips, honestly.
Yeah.
They're basically like tire flipping the thing back and forth.
No.
with him in there. I think they knew. I don't know if they would have done it if it was super stale. I'm pretty sure it had like just been replaced. So who knows? But yeah, he came out of there not so happy.
Oh my God.
They booted him right there. It was pretty funny.
Good. No, that's the kind of shit that pisses me off, and I'm glad that they recognize that and were able to handle it in such a comedic way. And then, you know, for the health of the class, getting that, you know, that shitty leader out of there.
Yeah. So there was a ton of kind of funny stories, but that one always stood out.
Yeah, well, I mean, we could probably talk for the 2 hours just on fucking hilarious shit we've seen, but we won't do that. So we'll move on. But that's a funny one. I'm just imagining just, you know, just beefy cadre just flipping it like down the road on Coleraine, just end over it.
Oh yeah.
So he passed RASP. Sounded like it was well, actually, let's go back and talk, you know, maybe like the mental, like just quickly about the mental thing. So you were talking like there was something else, because there was a, you know, triathlete and a D1 athlete, and they ended up quitting, you know, dudes that were probably more in shape than you. And people think that you have to be in like triathlete shape to make it through these selections. But it's really like you were hitting on, it's a mental game more so than a physical game, because your body can do a lot more than you give it credit for, but your mind's going to quit before your body will quit.
Yeah, every time. And so what I like to say is that special operations is a mindset. There's not necessarily anything that's different or that makes it special. What we have, we can buy better equipment, we get the right missions and everything, but that's there because of the mindset. So I'll tell you what, like, I get hit up all the time by guys that want to go into the Ranger Regiment, which is great. 99% of the time, the questions are always about how do I train? And it kind of kills me because I'm thinking, you could Google this in 5 seconds and learn, all right, what are the requirements? I got to run. I got to do push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. I got to be able to survive a swim. That's basically it. How hard is that to train for? There's 1,000 programs out there. It's never about the mental game. And so what I started to see in RASP was, yes, the physical tests that you have to pass to make it through RASP are not that difficult, right? The PT test. If you are a decent athlete and you actually gave a shit about training, you will be fine. You should be fine. The other things that people hear about, they're not pass or fail events all the time, right? If an instructor takes you on this ridiculous 10-mile ruck at a crazy pace and you can't keep up with the group, you're not going to get dropped. They may smoke you a bit, talk down to you, right? But again, it's all just a game. It's all just a game to see who will quit. The ones that don't quit, that's the platform that we want to essentially mold this ball of clay into a Ranger. And the ones that quit, they're not worth the time. And so what I started to notice too was the way that people talk to themselves, and the way that people talk to themselves alludes to their own belief in their thoughts, right? So to say, if anybody tells me that throughout stressful situations, they never had the thought of quitting, I don't believe them, because it's human nature. Your body and DNA and your brain are only wired for survival. They're not there to push harder, right? They're not there to expend excess energy, to possibly put yourself in danger, get hurt, get embarrassed. So it's going to inject thoughts in your head of, oh, maybe I could go do something else. Maybe I should sandbag this. Maybe I shouldn't be here. That's all the purpose of the course. So everybody has those thoughts, right? Those thoughts popped into my head. The difference was I didn't believe them. I knew what was happening. I knew that, okay, I am incredibly stressed, whether it's mental or physical stress. I haven't slept. I've barely eaten. I've been crawling through the mud. No shit, I'm having these thoughts, right? Remember the mission, remember the why. The other thing was guys didn't have a deep enough reason for why they're being there. Your why has to be stronger than essentially fear of death, right? Because in some things that you're doing, it could be lethal, right? You could kill yourself fast roping. You could be wandering deliriously on land nav in the night and fall and hit your head. You could get hit with a ricochet, like all of these different things. So your reason why has to be stronger than that. So if guys' reasons for wanting to be a Ranger was just so that they could wear a tan beret, never make it. Your reason, like my reason, and I'm sure like your reason, was I could not live with myself if I did not pass that course. There was no way that I would be okay, or it would take years to become okay with myself. And I would be on my deathbed, hopefully at, an older age, regretting that I didn't do this. And I wouldn't have felt like I served my country and I earned my place as a man, and like all of these things, right? It gets pretty grandiose, but that's the deep level of reasoning that I think you have to survive stressful environments. And it's not like it gets any easier. As somebody who hasn't gone through the pipeline, they always think of RASP as the hardest step. But as you and I know, RASP is absolutely not the hardest step, right?
That's the easiest.
RASP, RASP in essence, like, doesn't really matter too. Like, nobody's lives are in your hands. Your entire, your career is kind of on the line, but I guess you could have a second chance. So yeah, RASP is not the hardest. So you really have to have that reasoning pretty solid and built in.
Mm-hmm. I like that, the framework of like on your deathbed, or like there's a dude I follow. I don't know if you follow Justin Waller, entrepreneurial type, but he has this test where it's like the rocking chair test. It's like when you're 90 years old, sitting on your porch on your rocking chair, like, what are you going to look back on your life and think of it? Like, if you're trying to make a decision, like, is this going to be something that I'm going to be happy and proud of when I'm 90 years old sitting on that porch? Or is it something that I'm going to regret not doing, kind of deal?
Yeah.
Which I think is it's one of the more solid ones. And like, the whole, will I be a man if I quit kind of thing. That's what, one of the things that kept me going is like, hey, I told all these people back home I was going to do it, and a lot of people didn't believe me. And it was like, hey, this is a test. Like, I was fresh out of high school. I've never really been tested this way. I was like, I want to see what I'm capable of while I have, youth.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's to not realize your potential is kind of a tragic thing.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing goes for, post career, doing the entrepreneurial thing. Could easily get a safe job that just pays a paycheck and you collect it and you get your benefits and you keep going forever. But I know that once again, I'd be sitting in my rocking chair, whether I'm worth $1 billion or zero. And I'll be thinking, well, if I didn't do well, at least I had a wild ride and I gave it a shot. And if I did do well, look at me. And if I had taken that kind of comfortable route, it would have been, it was okay, but I'm kind of miserable. So taking the same approach.
So bouncing off of how RASP is, it's the gateway, but it's not the hardest thing you're ever going to do in regiment. So let's talk about when you showed up. So I think you guys showed up. You and our boy Axe showed up. It was like June, I want to say. Yeah, it was like June of 2016. So I'd been there since February. So you guys were the first two guys that we had come to the platoon since I had shown up. How was that showing up?
That was definitely interesting. I was there a week. Everybody was coming off of post-deployment leave. So when I actually showed up, nobody was there, besides a couple NCOs. And you're definitely a little scared. And we got roughed up pretty good. And it was hot there and just kind of getting smoked all day. But you're also starting to learn like, okay, this is now real. You go from a training environment where it's just a game, but they're playing like it's real, but it's a game, to now it's real. These guys are literally coming back from a deployment, an active combat deployment, right? So I knew this was essentially a different breed. So yeah, we got sent to the platoon, and it was full on right away, right? Everybody takes it pretty seriously. I remember my first team leader, was probably like 7 inches taller than me and 60 pounds heavier, and somehow ran like a gazelle. And working with that, and you just have to, you're constantly proving yourself, because now you're actually working with these guys, right? The instructors come and go. You move on to the next school, you never see them again necessarily, but now you're in this platoon and you kind of get one shot to make a reputation for yourself. And it's one thing to just, like we said, just get the tambourine and show up. A lot of guys show up to Ranger Regiment, but what about, it's probably like half of guys make it through their first year.
Yeah, I think the attrition rate, according to regiment, is a new private. It's like 50% of privates won't make it to Ranger school, or like will get kicked out.
So the way that you can, in simple terms, only 50% of new guys last 1 year, right? It's kind of like your probationary period. So you still have a ton of work to do. You're essentially competing. You're always competing for position, right? The Ranger Regiment essentially exists as an organization. Is you're either good enough to get promoted or you get booted. And that's at like every level is like that as you go up. And then the amount of slots get smaller and smaller. So I also knew that my next goal was to be successful as a Ranger, not just show up and say I was there for 3 months, but it was actually to, move forward, to go from, the private, the rifleman, to the 320, to the SAW, to the, Bravo team leader, Alpha team, it keeps going up. So then the goal was just to be successful. And yeah, it was an interesting time. Those first few months were definitely,
it was brutal. It was brutal that summer because we were there on Rear D, and it was one of the hottest summers that I can remember.
Yeah, and I just remember like every Sunday, we would party pretty good too because the weeks were so rough. And then every Sunday I would just sit in a beach chair until the sun went down with a couple guys, and just with like a bottle of Pedialyte, hydrating for the next day.
Because you knew that Monday was coming, and I think second squad, y'all did like 5 Mile Mondays. Maybe that was third. I think it was y'all did it.
Whatever it was, whatever we did, it was never easy. I mean,
No.
I don't know what other job where you show up on Monday morning at 6 a.m. and you're about to go, you're going to come back, 30 minutes later looking like you jumped in a pool from sweat.
Dude. Yeah. So you showed up and you went to Ranger School pretty quick from what I remember.
Yeah, pretty much right away. Part of it was luck of the draw, and part of it was doing decent on the PT tests. Because there's a certain amount of slots. Sometimes they're given to specific platoons or guys that haven't gone to Ranger School yet. I can't remember exactly what happened. Maybe it was like everybody was going to do another type of training, and I was so new. They were like, test him out. If he makes it, he makes it. And if he doesn't, we get to get rid of him quickly. And I just had to get in the top few guys on the PT test. And then I went. So yeah, I went to Ranger School really quick, which, in terms of the career was great. And I was just hoping that I was prepared for it.
Did that, going to school quick, because you probably didn't get too many, Ranger School classes or anything. How did you handle showing up to now Ranger School? I guess you had cert, before you go to school, so that probably did most of the preparation for you. But
yeah,
was that any different than showing up for RASP mentally for you?
Yeah, mentally it was, just because it's just another level of pressure. Now it's like, oh, I made it through all of that. I could lose it all again just by failing Ranger School. The fact that I didn't get a lot of Ranger School classes or a lot of time in regiment, I think, it's better to have those. Other guys like you, I'm sure, were a lot more confident in terms of all of those skills. But I also think that you could go in completely blind and go to cert and go to Ranger School. They teach you everything you need to know. It's all in the book, right? They teach you everything you need to know. You just don't get as many reps. So I wouldn't say it's a necessity. It's a nice to have. If you get some more classes, you get a little more time under your belt, you kind of feel a little bit more confident, right? I had also, in Ranger School, you have to act as a squad leader, a platoon sergeant, a platoon leader. I had never actually seen that in real life, right? You play it in basic training, but I never really saw what that actually looked like. So that was all new. But again, Ranger School is another one where Ranger School is not easy, but it is simple, right? The rules and the things you have to follow are all in the books. You have to kind of fight the temptation to just do things maybe the way that you know it, and you have to just kind of follow the book and follow the rules. It's a leadership school that's kind of based off of Vietnam era tactics. So things are a little bit different. But yeah, the Ranger School experience was definitely a suck. My goal was just to pass and not get recycled and not have to get stuck there for too long.
I think you went straight through from what I recall, right?
Yeah. I went straight through, and I was proud of it, but I know there's another, tick on the old checkbox if you did get recycled, and you're like, I made it. I knew guys that were there for a long, long time.
Yeah, I was there for 6 months.
Yeah,
That was brutal.
rough.
I mean, it's good if you go straight through, but it's also, character building if you recycle, once or twice. Like,
100%. It's only a negative if you don't see it as growth. And
mhm,
yeah, it's for sure character building, getting recycled, man, because that's a kick in the balls for sure.
yeah. I was because I was trying to make that 17 deployment. I was like, all right, if I can go straight through, I can hit the 17 trip to Iraq. And I didn't. That was what pissed me off the most about recycling. I was just pissed that I couldn't get overseas again with my boys. I was like, damn it, I'm missing out on potentially something really cool. But I know I have to
Yeah,
do this. I have to stick it out to stay and get
that's the
more
same
later.
way. I felt the same way in 16 with
Yeah.
Afghanistan.
Yeah. Yeah, because you left right before we blew out.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
in CERT before he blew out.
Ah. So
Yeah,
coming
same
back, how was that coming back? Because usually, the typical timeline for dudes is they spend, 6 months to a year as a private, ideally before they go to Ranger school. So they have, some live fires under their belt, maybe a deployment. Um, and in your case, you didn't really have much time as a private, and then you got your tab, and then you came back. So how did you navigate now learning that leadership role without knowing, maybe
Yeah.
as much as the privates or the tabs who'd been there, longer?
Yeah, it's a bit like, drinking through a fire hose as it always is. But I came back, and once you get the Ranger tab, you're kind of, to a degree, accepted now. You're a full member. But I had the knowledge of a private still, right? In terms of, because you don't come out of Ranger school. Coming out of Ranger school gives you the tab, gives you a little badge of honor, but you're not actually a better Ranger regiment soldier, right? Infantryman. They're very different. The tactics and everything is completely changed. You get some basic knowledge. So I just had to learn. Part of it was a fake it till you make it, which I think is a lot of aspects and a lot of things. I was lucky that I had been in leadership positions, like on sports teams in high school and college. I had been in leadership positions, as I went up through, OSUT and RASP, and then of course in Ranger school. And then I really just leaned on the other experienced tabs and team leaders to teach me, because they knew it was in their best interest too, right? That the team leader needs to make sure that it's as much of a burden to him to have a tab with the knowledge of a private as it is to me, right? So he's got to make the team look good, and the team has to be able to perform. So yeah, I don't know, man. It was just kind of, you step up to the plate, learn as much as you can, you act in the role. I had to try to, also be a bit respectful, as my peers or guys that he'd even been there before me were now my privates as well. So I think I kind of did my best to be teaching leader role versus kind of the hard charging NCO just yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you walked that line pretty well, because like you were saying, like there was privates that had been there, and you went to school, got your tab before they got a chance to go. And that can go one of two ways. Either you come back as a complete, douche, which is not going to earn you the respect, or the route that you went, which is like, hey, like I recognize that I have the self-awareness to know that I am lacking in a lot of areas. So I'm not going to try and act like someone I'm not to these guys before I can, back it up with experience and knowledge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that was a fine line to walk, but it's all learning team dynamics. Part of the reason why we're all there is to be part of this team. So
Mhm.
we're just kind of learning where you fit in.
Absolutely. So you hit the 17 deployment. I guess we can talk about that for, we won't go, super specific, but how was your first deployment?
First deployment was good. It was a good good intro. So we basically, we're in Iraq and Syria, and right on that northern border. depending on where you were in what squad and team, we kind of rotated around a little bit, depending on what kind of mission set you were doing. Sometimes we're working a lot, sometimes relatively boring, but I learned a lot there. You got exposure to other units. I got exposure to what, Ranger life is like kind of on deployment. I got exposure to the Middle East and other cultures and the locals there. Got exposure to higher level special operations units that we were attached to and worked with. And yeah, I mean, overall, the experience was awesome. That's why I felt like that's why I was there, right? And even looking back on it, right, I was there for the deployment. The deployment was essentially the game. Everything else is training up to it. You're there to deploy, and that's kind of the difference of the mentality with the Ranger Regiment versus others. So, yeah, I mean, overall, it was solid. I got to see a lot. I got to do a good amount for a younger guy at that time, and overall great experience.
Mm-hmm. Lived up to expectations, you think, or was
it's tough to know what my expectations were, because you always knew, we knew that things had slowed down a bit from like closer to the early 2000s. So I knew it wasn't going to be the same as then. And I think, sometimes it lived up to the expectations, sometimes it didn't. It's kind of the highs and lows of everything. You'll always look back and wish you could have done more, but there's also nothing we could have done about that. I'm not the one who's given us missions and action and things to do. I also busted my foot on the very last week.
I forgot about that. Fast open. You mentioned how fast open will kill you, dude. I hate fast open. That was my least favorite thing to do. I hate it. I'd rather jump, I'd rather do 10 combat jumps than, 140-foot fast rope, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And I was so pissed about that, and it was just something stupid. Like it was feeling confident on the fast rope and just going quick. And the way that the rope was curled, it kind of goes all over the place, and you're really supposed to look and spot the landing. And I kind of did, but not really. I was just like, let's go. And foot landed on the side of the rope. And I don't know if I was carrying a saw, right? So
you're probably
carrying
a saw, yeah.
And I just fall perfectly on the side of my foot, like my whole body weight, and pop a ligament that holds all these bones together. Luckily, it was at the very, very end of the deployment, but that part was less fun.
So how was it recovering? Like, how long did it take to recover, and how did you keep yourself mentally in the game, and I guess physically in the game too? Because like you're gonna be allowed a little bit of recovery time, but as soon as you get off that, like you still have to be right back into it, because like we could be going to war the next week. How did you deal with that?
That was an experience, because I had to go home. I had to get surgery. I had to get surgery to basically tie the ligament back together and pin it to the bones. And it would have been better if I actually broke something, because then it just you put it in a cast, it heals, you're good to go. The ligaments take a long time because they don't really grow back. They kind of create scar tissue. So I was recovering, everybody knows Rangers, 4 months deployed, 8 months training, and then 4 months deployed. I was recovering for the 8 months up until the point where the physical training guys, I was like, hey, we deploy in 2 weeks. I'm about to go on leave. And they were like, you can't do that. You're not recovering. And I'm like, see ya. I'm going. I finally got to the point where I could do everything, but it hurt. So I got to Syria in 2018, and every single morning when I woke up, I'm limping like I broke my ankle, right? And it would take me time to get the blood flow back in there and do my exercises and be able to function again. And so I kind of took that risk. Through the training cycle, I had to miss some things. I'm starting to get up to the point where it's like, depending on how this deployment goes, I was a a tab, but I had to fill in a team leader role as well. So yeah, that was difficult, right? I'd heard the platoon sergeant when I came back, they were like, oh, I heard they're trying to med board you, right? Kick you out for a medical reason. And so I'm doing everything I can to scratch and claw and basically hold my position. And that really, as you know, that jeopardizes things a lot, because you kind of, when you lose momentum, guys just kind of overshoot you.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I think it was that I never turned anything down. I never said, hey, I can't do any of that. I just kind of like hobbled around as fast as I could. And then by the time we went on the Syria deployment, I was good enough. Like the foot was good. It was still painful, but it functioned. And so just went and did it. And it wasn't until like the next year. So it really took like an entire year to actually feel like, yeah, this thing's solid. I'm good to go.
Wow. And that was a long one too, because we were in Syria for 5 months, and you were up in because we split the platoon, and I was with Shoemate. Shoemate's been on the podcast before. He was down with me, kind of, or I guess across really, more eastern Syria, and you guys were kind of more central, north central.
Cool. Yep, more west of you guys.
Yeah. So how was it at the spot y'all were at? Like, was it
the spot we were at was interesting. It was this concrete factory that had like changed hands a bunch of times, and it had previously been ISIS occupied. And
I guess we can call it like it is. It was the Lafarge cement factory, because it's been blown up. It's not in our hands anymore. I guess we can probably name that. Enough people on the internet know that we were there, I think so.
Yeah, so we're at this weird factory looking place with like a 87-story staircase that we would run up all the time. And yeah, we were there. There was some British, there was some guys from the unit, there was us, there was a random like French intelligence people that were there. And yeah, it was really central to a lot of like the hot spots in Syria, like Manbij and Raqqa, Hasaka, like, close to where you guys were. And it was cool. That was a very different deployment, because there was no longer like what you think of as special operations missions having assets, right? You go to Afghanistan, it's like the big show. Your freaking drone feeds are getting patched into every chain of command, maybe the Pentagon, who knows. You've got 7 levels of aircraft above you, right? You got your handheld drones, and you've got the DAPS birds, and then you've got other drones, and fighters are in the area. Like, you have everything. You got medevac, there's a QRF force. When we were in Syria, it was like, something goes bad, all right, steal a car, get yourself home. We're driving around in these up armored Land Cruisers, or literally minivans, like soccer mom minivans.
Oh damn, y'all had minivans. Were they up armored too?
No.
Oh, okay. I was about to say, that's
and
gangster.
One of them for the locals got crumbled, right? So we're basically in the soccer mom minivans that the locals had, or they're in the flatbed, I can't remember the name, flatbed pickup trucks. We call them with the trunk monkeys on the back.
Hilux, or
they
the
weren't
Land Cruiser?
Hiluxes.
Were they the Land Cruiser trucks?
Flatbeds.
Oh, bongos.
They were like the bongos,
yeah,
with a 50 cal on the back, and the dude strapped to it. We had some other up armored vehicles as well that we'd go around in, striker looking Panders, as they call them.
Yeah, the Panders.
But yeah,
I love those things.
They were interesting, but that was it. So it was cool, because there's this totally different feel. There's also, nobody knew we were there. Nobody like supposed to know we were there. Like, these missions weren't, nobody back. People in the US are like, Syria, what? There's people over there. There was very few Americans. It was basically our 2 bases, which were tiny, and like a minuscule amount of artillery Marines, and like a couple Green Berets. And that was like the entire American presence in Syria. So it was just cool. It's very different from like the theater of Afghanistan.
It was very cowboy. That's the term that comes to mind. It's like Wild West. It's like, hey, you're on your
Yes.
own. You don't have any kind of, QRF. You are the QRF basically. And, you're out there getting food from the locals. Like you have local chefs, local food that's getting trucked in. And it's like, you're out there. Like if something goes wrong, it's going to be, I don't want to compare it to like a 13 hours kind of situation, but it would be, close to that, like where it's just you and your boys having to fight.
It totally would be. I mean, we went out, there's basically intelligence gathering and electronic warfare that would build the intelligence to go do the raids. And so we kind of rotate doing that. And we're out there for 4 days. There's, I think, 4 of us. There's 4 of us and an interpreter in 2 Toyota Land Cruisers. And we are in a place where just like a couple weeks before, there were IED attacks during one of the raids, right? So it's not the safest area. The only attachment we have to literally anything is like the radio saying, hey, we're leaving. See you in 4 days. If that radio, something happens to that's in the truck, basically on our own, you're in this city, right? It's 4 guys, interpreter that can't really defend himself, 1 or 2 electronic warfare guys that aren't necessarily equipped to defend themselves, and 4 rangers. And so we're just out there, man. That's total Wild West. I mean, I remember this is a funny story. Not that funny, but our interpreter, it was during Ramadan. So we were like, all right, we need some food. We need some like real food instead of these bullshit MREs. And the interpreter's like, I can't go to the store during the day because they're going to be suspicious because nobody here eats during the day, right? It's Ramadan. You wait till sunset. So at sunset, he goes and he gets enough shawarmas, which is basically, it's basic for those who don't know, at least the ones in Syria, it's a Middle Eastern burrito.
So good.
And they're incredible. And I think he got like 36 in a bag. It comes back with a bag of like, imagine like 30 burritos. And we're just, as we're like moving building to building, kind of eating those along the way. But yeah, that was total kind of Wild West, total cowboy. Like we're out there on our own. Like I said, something happens to the truck, steal a car, get back.
Yeah. It's unique because we don't like the typical ranger mission isn't that. It's, fucking point raids. It's not spy, spook, low vis kind of shit. So
yeah,
when we started going to, Syria, like it was like a kind of a transition, like the platoons that were slated to go to Syria started doing a little bit more unconventional, maybe more of the maybe Green Beret kind of side of things, kind of like low vis, where you're, not operating in a platoon size element. You're not wearing your full cry uniform and kit. You're not going out at night. You're doing stuff during the day. So it wasn't the typical ranger mission, which, I mean, I'm sad that our platoon never got to do a full, like a team BAF deployment, but it was still cool that we got to do these kind of like they weren't, very kinetic, but it was like a very cool, unique experience that not very many people at all in the Ranger Regiment and in the Army as a whole, like got to do.
Yeah. And you're in these like super interesting places too, right? Because the summer before had been the entire clearance of Raqqa, which was incredibly kinetic, maybe from a different perspective, more like with, mortar teams and everything. But then being able to go back through those cities and looking at kind of the carnage and them trying to rebuild them and the places that ISIS and the other groups had occupied and torture chambers, like all these crazy things. We got to see a lot. It was really super interesting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, you see all these headlines on the news about like, oh, these conflicts in, places, but it was like we were there, like maybe not so much in Afghanistan, because Afghanistan kind of, its own thing. People kind of forgot about it, but like Syria was like a fresh kind of thing. And it was like, hey, we're there, like people that back home reading about this in the headlines. It's like, oh, we've been to these places and we've seen it. We've met the people, like we've eaten the food, like we've seen how ISIS, function. And, I don't know, it's just kind of cool, like being a part of that kind of history, even though we didn't get to, get our kill on over there.
It's interesting. It'll be interesting to see, what makes it into the movies when we're the old guys.
Oh man. I don't know if there'll be too much made about Syria. I mean, the mortar teams had the freaking, we'll have the highlight reel on that one for sure if they do it right.
Sure. Absolutely. they're getting those kill counts were ridiculous.
Yeah. One of my boys that I went to RAS with fucked himself up shooting mortars, like legit. I don't know if, I'm not going to say his name, but you probably know who I'm talking about. You probably heard about it.
Yeah, that's and that's kind of one of the missions too that I've been trying to help with now as a veteran, is the brain injury side. Because I reckon I even noticed it in myself too, right? Like I was lucky. I know guys, and as well, that have really, really bad issues, especially from those mortar teams.
Mm-hmm.
But heavy weapons, rockets, demo, it's basically a miniature concussion every time. So you're talking hundreds or thousands of mini concussions that guys like you and I have had, and anybody that's been in longer, even more. And the ramifications that has on brain function, memory, focus, hormone function, neurotransmitters, all of these things. And there are, treatments and stuff for them. And it's kind of this silent thing, right? And there's not too much protection of it. The NFL tries to do a lot for it as well, but not necessarily fully in the military. So that's a good initiative. Hopefully in the future, there should be like protocols for everybody to be able to go through to help with the brain function.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they were like starting with the goose, like in particular, like the goose was recognized as one of the bigger ones. It's like, hey, like you have a certain amount of rounds you can shoot per day. But outside of that, like there was no limit on breaching charges. There was no limit on, AT4s or,
No.
one of our guys. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, you would hear and see too, guys throwing up after enough goose rounds, shitting blood.
Yeah.
Like that's not supposed to happen.
That's not normal. Well, there is Van Heel. I think I can't remember if he talked about it on the podcast, but I'll bring it up next time he's on. He got a concussion from his team leader shooting a shorty like right over his head, like legit, like diagnosed concussion, just from the muzzle blast of a 10.5-inch DD. It's like, that's crazy. Like, being on a gun team too, like if you're an AG, like you're right next to that machine gun going off and you're shooting like thousands of rounds every live fire. Like you were saying, they're like mini concussions, and it does add up. Not to mention the stuff that can give you real concussions: fast roping, jumping, doing the whole what is it when we're jumping out of the back of the Chinook into the water? Helocasting.
Yeah, there's more than enough that can create all sorts of problems for people.
Yeah. Damn, we've been going for about an hour, so we'll kind of maybe start getting towards the end here. So we could probably talk about the 2019 deployment, but I feel like that'll go for another, half hour. But we'll have to have you on another time, and we'll continue it. But let's hear about the Ranger blueprint, because like you were mentioning in the beginning, you're getting a bunch of guys asking you questions. And now that I've got this channel, we're close to, like 4,000 subscribers. Like a lot of them are dudes that are, looking to go into special operations, mostly, primarily Ranger Regiment. So tell us about kind of the Ranger blueprint and the initiative and what that is and why people should partake in it.
Yeah. So the goal for it was to essentially provide the knowledge from experience, right? So from somebody that has been there, done it, and has been relatively successful, what are the real tools it takes to get there? So this is kind of my chance of giving back a bit. Like I said, I had read the books of other guys when I was choosing to go into the Army, and I was lucky enough that they took a chance to talk to me. I remember a guy who was in 2nd Battalion. He was like coming off of a plane in Alaska, gave me a call, happy to chat with me. So there's not a lot of us. There's not a lot of information around. around. It's not as publicized as, let's say the SEAL teams. So, and then I started doing some mentoring with a couple other groups. And I started getting hit up constantly online, tons of questions, usually the wrong questions, right? About things with physical training only. And so I put together what I felt was the real curriculum to pass and exceed the standards, and most importantly, to train your mind alongside your body. So I really put everything in there. I think that people would benefit from it, even if they're not going into the military, because I have a lot of stuff, like how do you clear negative emotion so that you can think clearly and make a proper decision and not have it carry over into the rest of your life and cause a downward spiral? How do you create accountability with your life? Okay, you decided that you want to be a ranger. You know you need to do these things. Are you actually tracking accountability? Now, what do you do if you fail your own accountability tracking? How do you reinforce your reasons why, like we talked about in the beginning of this podcast? Then it goes into everything else. There's some things about life in the regiment, making decisions, different positions, how to deal with people, how to communicate, everything from like basic physical health functions, how to sleep, recover, be mobile, what your nutrition should look like, right? We've got like very in-depth nutrition plans in there that people can utilize. And then the training is not just follow this CrossFit program. It's your task is to max out a Ranger PT test, even on a bad day, on your worst day, when you're feeling sick. Great. How do we get there? Very, very systemized, evidence-based ways to do that, such as, right, we know that's not always about actually the physical strength of the muscle, but actually the neurologic adaptation to the movement, right? So how do we use that? There's specific training protocols for that. Running is not just about taking pain, it's how to create efficiency, right? Towards the end of my Ranger career, I started to learn about breathing. How does breathing affect the mind? How does breathing affect oxygen efficiency when you're running? I was never the best runner, so I really had to learn all these things. How to change your running form so you don't get injured. If I hadn't changed my running form, I would not have made it, because I was, from my rugby career, I could not stop getting shin splints, and shin splints don't heal unless you stop running. So we've got all of that in there. Mindset, how to calm your mind, how to amp up your mind, how to analyze your thoughts, right? So it's really very comprehensive. And the goal is that somebody can take it, they can utilize it at their own pace, they can go through it, they can learn it. There's tools in there to utilize. This is really my attempt at giving back to the community. People are going to go get other programs and other physical programs. I'm doing tactical athlete, I'm doing soft lead, I'm doing, like, great. This is the only one that's going to give you the foundation that I have seen. I'm sure there's others out there that give you the foundation for that mental edge, which is really the important part. And for all the guys out there that, they're doing all this other training and CrossFit and all of that, like, that stuff's great. I believe that is better. Like, the Army physical fitness test is not really a test of fitness. It's a test of, can you pass these standards under these parameters? But you'll have all the time in the world to do CrossFit tactical athlete style training the second you show up to your Ranger battalion. But until then, your only objective is to be able to pass the pass or fail standards. So that it's kind of very titrated for that specific reason. So yeah, you can go on the Instagram at the Ranger Blueprint. The link is right there. There's some videos, and you basically jump on in. We got a little Discord. We can ask some questions. I'd love to have you in there.
Yeah, no, I was going to say before we got on, I was like, hey, I can help out in there. I'll, be one of the admins or whatever.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about doing, just kind of like private for the members only. We can have chats like this where you and I jump on.
Oh, dude. Yeah. Like Zoom calls.
Yeah. Zoom calls. Yeah. We answer questions live. So yeah, it's good. It keeps me connected a little bit. And, the knowledge needs to go somewhere. Got to help somebody. And as you and I know, the special operations units are hurting for numbers. I've in my career, I never saw a full team. Never seen a full Ranger team. I've never seen a full Green Beret ODA. They're always short. So need more good guys being able to step up to the plate.
Absolutely. To hit off of what you said throughout this a couple times is like there's not a whole lot of Rangers out there that like to talk about their experiences. This was why I kind of started this whole project. And it's hard to find like legitimate like mentors because there's, like you said, there's a ton of SEALs. Like statistically, there's a ton more Green Berets than there are Rangers.
Yep.
And we get kind of like maybe held up in like wanting to stay quiet kind of about our stuff just because there is, like we don't want to come off as like braggadocio or like trying to brag or like, like, oh, we did all this cool shit. It's like, but at the end of the day, like we want to be able to help sustain the units that we came from. And like, it's going to help the unit at the end of the day if we can give good information and help find the right people, even though, we're not recruiters at the end of the day, like, and at the end of the day, it has to be coming from that person initially, but the people that are out there looking for this information, like we want to be able to get it to them because it's going to help them. It's going to help them be better Rangers and continue that lineage and continue that tradition.
I agree. I understand the guys that want to just keep it as the quiet professional. And like you and I said, the things that we're talking about are more, what's creating success for people. And I think it can help them out. And I kind of think it's our duty now to be able to pass this along and whatever medium that guys want to do that. There's other training programs, doing things in person, running camps. I've had groups, of 20 guys down here at the beach, doing workouts on the beach and things like that. So hopefully we'll start to build more of these things in. But yeah, as you said, it's part of the purpose. When we were training the guys below us. Now that we're out, hopefully we can help train some civilians to enter the ranks prepared.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. Our missions have co-aligned. I don't know why I didn't have you on the damn podcast earlier. Like I just started getting ads for the Ranger Blueprint. I was like, oh, okay, what's this? And I was like, oh, it's Pearce. Oh, no fucking way. Wow. Now the freaking your ads retargeting is relentless. Like I keep getting them now, which I need to figure out a way to like turn them off so you guys aren't paying for me because it's like ours already there. But I think that we've been going for about an hour, so I think we'll wrap it up here. All the links are going to be down below. I'll link you want me to link your personal Instagram? The Pearce YouTube. Well. So Pearce's Instagram will be down there. The Ranger Blueprint Instagram will be down there. And then we'll have a link direct to the Ranger Blueprint as well in the description. Go check those out. Solid information. I need to get in and really take a look at it. But I'm sure that it's what you need. Like you were saying, like it's super, like people don't know how to train their mind. Like there's thousands of programs out there that teach you how to, max your push-ups. Thousands. You can find them, you can figure it out. It's not that hard, but it's a lot harder to learn how to mentally navigate extreme stress situations and coming back from failure, coming back from injury, and building that solid mental model that you're going to use for the rest of your life. Even again, like you were saying, like this is good even if you're not trying to go special operations. Maybe if you're just joining the army, this will still be good. If you're going into entrepreneurship, like this is going to be good for you. Like if you want to be a high performing human, it sounds like this is something that you should master, and it sounds like you've got a solid solution to that. So
yeah, that's the goal. Been lucky to be able to like train some pro athletes after the career as well, so I want to give it back to the community.
Absolutely. Well, Pearce, thanks for coming on. We'll have to get you back on at some point, and it sounds like I'll be making some stops in on your community you're building up there with the Ranger
100%.
Blueprint here.
100%.
Excellent. Any last words, any last piece of advice?
No, just be solid about your decision, whether you want to do this or not. And once you make that decision, flip the switch so that everything in your life aligns towards it. Best thing you can do.
I like it. All right. Thanks again. And we will catch you all next time.